What's up, people? It's another edition of the New Breed Podcast, the world's best music podcast, talking about everything. Brutal, new death, hard, slam, grind, thrash, core, metal. I'm one half of your hosting to a Jay Horsecow. With me, I have my partner in crime, the notorious TIM, Tim Anderson Jr. Tim, how's it going?
Great. Since we always start with the weather, how fucking nice is it for November?
I fucking hate it. I hate it.
Really?
Hate it. Hate it.
Beautiful.
I went out today. I had to replace a piece of lattice. I had to mothball my mower, so I had to run it, oil change, put it in the shed, drain the gas, run it dry. I was sweating like a fat girl. No. And I'm standing there and I got a hat on and I'm soaked and I'm thinking to myself, it is November. I should have a hoodie and jeans on. I had shorts and a t-shirt on.
That was great, man.
Now, I am not built for this weather. I got to go north.
Good luck.
Yeah. All right. So anyway.
You go north, I go south. We still have Zoom.
This is true. As long as we could kind of stay in the same time zone. So what are we talking about this week, folks? Well, this week, first time I think we've actually dove into a movie where, no, we've done the Woodstock Travis mockeries. We are diving into the recent biography, Deadguy, Killing Music by Fourth Media. So this is the story behind the New Jersey, I guess, hardcore band Deadguy. For those of you that don't know, Deadguy was a band out of New Brunswick in New Jersey. It was in the mid to late 90s, mid 90s to late 90s. They were on Victory Records. They were part of that first wave of awesome Victory stuff with All Out War and Earth Crisis and Snapcase and Strife and Hi-Fi and the Roadburners and Baby Gopal and all that fun stuff. And they ceremoniously imploded on their first national tour before the first album even came out. And they have a bit of a cult following, Tim, I guess you would say, around here. But also they have a following in the greater hardcore music scene, which we're going to get into in a bit. They were so influential. They were one of those bands that influenced everybody and nobody knew until after the fact.
Yeah. I think if you're a Jersey native, Philly native, kind of stuff like that, they were a really, really big band especially back then for people. It's because it was one of them bands that they were so ahead of everyone else of what they were doing, man. It's like, even on the doc, they were saying, we're not hardcore, we're not thrash, we're not
heavy metal, because they weren't heavy metal now.
Yeah, we're just, I think he described it as like pain or something, or he something like crazy like that. And I was like, yeah, that's fucking nuts, because when you do listen to the record, man, it's it is just all over the place insanity.
Yeah. So, the album in question is Fixation on a Coworker. And Tim, you actually interviewed the lead singer, Tim Singer, on your other show, which we'll put a link to that in the show notes. I'm really, really pissed I missed that one. But yeah, they were a Jersey staple. People don't realize around Rutgers University, which is New Brunswick area, there was a very, very big basement scene. They're starting to bring it back now. It's kind of wild. There's shows all over the place. But bands like Deadguy, bands like Thursday,
yeah.
I think it was it Saves the Day is from around there as well. Yep. They're a Jersey band. A lot of these bands came up out of that New Jersey basement scene, coupled with the fact that Josh Gabrell from Trustkill, he lived in Tinton Falls, which is not too far from there. So he used to have shows in his parents' basement. You want to talk about some wild shows. He had Earth Crisis, Snapcase, Strife, basically the California Takeover in his basement, Deadguy, Bloodlet, all that stuff. It was kind of wild. So back to this, Tim. I don't know how much reading you did before you went in, but this was the first time they'd all been in the same room together since they broke up in, what was that, 95, 96?
Was it all the way? Was it 96? Wow.
Yep. When Tim Singer and Keith Huckins left, it was either 95 or 96. And this was the first time they were all in a room together.
So that's what, 2006, 16, 25 years. Yeah, 26 years. Wow, man.
Yep. And it was wild.
Yeah, it's funny because in the doc, they're talking and they're waiting. I think they're waiting for Tim and they're like, what a fucking surprise.
Yeah. Guy's late again. What a surprise.
26 years later, the dude's still fucking late, man.
But it's kind of crazy how they all walked into a room. It was the first time they'd all been in the same room together. And you could tell right then that there was a vibe. When they walked in, you could see it on screen. There was a vibe. So for those that haven't watched the documentary, Deadguy put out a couple of EPs. What was it? White Meat. Yeah. And then there was one or two before that. All right, Tim, we got to pull it up. What's the Deadguy
I think there was
discography?
one. Wasn't there one just called like Work or something?
Let's
I
see here.
what was all puns?
Work
What was
ethic.
his work ethic? What was his fucking fixation with work?
I guess he just hated work. I guess he just hated work. But they did an EP. They did a 7-inch called White Meat in
Yeah.
'94. They did the Work Ethic EP, which also had the White Meat tracks. That was '94 as well. Then they did Fixation on a Coworker, which is Victory Records '95. And then their last album was Screaming with the Deadguy Quintet. But we'll get to that in a minute. But the funny thing is, again, these guys hadn't seen each other. They were putting out EPs. They recorded the LP. They sent it over to Victory, and then they went on an American tour. And this is back before cell phones, before the internet. It literally was you went with a road
map.
atlas,
Yep.
a road atlas and a list of phone numbers and places to call. And they talked about it in the this is the wild thing, Tim. They talked about it in the movie that, oh yeah, we didn't have like a plan or anything. We were just driving around playing. Like, how fucking insane is that?
Which is wild to think of because if I go like to the same town, I have to use GPS. You know what I mean? Like, hey, meet me at my house, and I'm like, oh, give me your address. I got to put it in my Apple. It's like, yo, man,
Yep.
how the fuck were you driving all the way around the country with just an atlas? Like, that's
A-
wild shit, man.
And dude, they had no like routing. It wasn't like, okay, well, we're gonna start in Jersey and we're gonna hit Philly, Baltimore, DC. Then we're gonna cut over to Louisville. Then we're gonna come back and hit Virginia Beach. They literally just like winged it. They winged it. And long story short, they get to, I think it's Portland. They get to Portland or Seattle on the West Coast, and Tim Singer was a graphics guy. So he said, I saved up money to tour. So he was having a good time, and the rest of the band was broke as shit, eating ramen noodles and like butter sandwiches. And they all just kind of boiled over. And it unceremoniously, Tim and Keith stayed behind on the West Coast, and the rest of the other three guys just trucked it back across the country.
Yeah, I remember when I interviewed him, we went down that rabbit hole of him staying out there and how much he loved it and shit. And then I guess, as the time went, I guess they kind of were like, oh, I can't fucking deal with this anymore. Like, it's like, I've never been over there. I've never lived there, obviously, but like, it kind of seems like it just fucking is miserable as shit.
What, the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, man.
It's not bad. I guess if you like the rain, the one time I've been there, once or twice, and it was unseasonably warm, and I wanted to kill myself because I had jeans and flannels, and it was not jeans and flannel weather. I could have got by with long sleeve t-shirt and a pair of shorts, so I was pissed. But yeah,
That's the best.
It's beautiful, but yeah. So the band unceremoniously implodes. They drive back across the country, and then they decide to keep going.
Yeah.
They decide to keep going. So, but before we get to that part, let's go back into the history. So, I believe it was Keith Huckins was in Rorschach, I think, or was Tim in the band Rorschach?
Which is another fucking great band.
Yes, yeah,
But I think it might have been both,
or maybe. But they had a pedigree before they came in. The band put their stuff together, and so let's talk, Tim. Let's talk a little bit about the sound.
Oof.
So, what band do you think they most sound like if you had to draw a parallel?
I mean, obviously, you're going to think of Converge after Petitioning the Empty Sky and stuff like that.
Okay.
And Forever Comes Crashing. After Forever Comes Crashing is when I think, because let's get this straight too. Them two records by Converge are fucking genre-defining records. You can't even Jane Doe.
Which one?
Genre.
Petitioning, and then Where Forever Comes. Yeah,
dude. I mean, them two records are fucking monsters, dude. And then Jane Doe comes out, that completely wipes the floor with everything back then. So to me, if you ask, say maybe Jacob Bannon, he probably would say that Deadguy was a huge inspiration for that band because the similarities are there. I mean, the Deadguy, I mean, it's chaotic as hell. It's fucking nerve-wracking, man. Like when you listen to it, it just wrecks your nerves, dude. Like you don't know what the fuck's going on. Like even I've never seen them live, but like just the videos I seen, like that shit is just chaos, man. And like it always looks like people don't know how to fucking react to it when they would see them. And then you had the singer who would always sing with the mic stand like down, and he had to
Oh, the
crouch.
guitar. Yeah, what's his name? Crispy. The
Yeah,
guitarist
like
plays leaning forward. Yeah, that's something else. But for me, it's the first band that I thought of when I heard them was Unsane.
okay, okay.
Unsane was the first parallel that I drew. So if you're listening and you never heard Deadguy, think Unsane, think Early Converge, Jesus Lizard, right? Some of the avant-garde stuff from Jesus Lizard.
Yeah.
Ken Mode. Ken Mode wouldn't be here without Deadguy. I know, like early Today Is the Day. I'm not a Today Is the Day fan, but a lot of their earlier stuff, I think there's a lot of parallels there. But yeah, it's a very angular is the word I always think to use to describe them.
Yeah, you know, that's a perfect word to say right there. It's just like I said before, it's way ahead of its time, so it's hard to really say who they sounded like, because I think you can name a bunch of bands who tried to sound like them.
Yeah.
But like I said, I mean, it's when you think about it too, 1996, man, and you're putting out stuff like that's like other world stuff right there.
Yeah.
Like what makes you like, I would like to like ask Crispy, like, like where do you get like your inspiration for like your guitar work on there? Because like we were saying, nobody did it back then. Like, yeah, there were bands that had nuances of that stuff, but that was a completely different animal, man.
Yeah. Yeah. They had a sound that was totally themselves. And like you said, live. I think it's Die With Your Mask On, where it starts off with the harmonics, Judun,
Yeah.
and Keith Huckins is throwing his guitar around. Like it literally was a battle. And I was lucky enough to see them live. The biggest show they ever played was at WSOU's birthday bash. I got to see them there. It wasn't with Tim Singer and Keith Huckins. It was with the second lineup. But even still, I mean, they were a monster on stage. They were an absolute monster.
I remember asking Tim about how they got the band name, and I know he said it was from a movie.
John Candy movie, Only the Lonely.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. Yeah, and I've never seen it. I still haven't seen that, so that's probably something I should check out.
Yeah, probably. I've never seen it either. I've never seen it. I stopped with him. I think with Uncle Buck.
Candy rules though. He rolled, man.
What was I gonna say? So speaking of Deadguy, like their aesthetic. If you look at their artwork, and anybody, if you get a chance to buy a copy of the actual CD with the booklet, it's definitely worth the money. Again, Tim is a graphic designer, Tim Singer. So he did the font, he did all the liner work, he does all their t-shirts. They were notorious for doing small runs of t-shirts, stickers, all sorts of like messaging, which basically it's kind of like the messaging from They Live, the movie where, you know, eat, consume, obey, that sort of stuff. They do all sorts of dark shit, and it was really good. They did the Nirvana ripoff, which was, they talk about it in the movie. It's really kind of crass, but really funny. That they were a unique animal, and the documentary walks through the phases of the band. There was the part that jumped out to me, Tim, was when they played the raw vocal tracks of Tim Singer. So with no backing, it's him just yelling, and he's still can do it.
And that was recorded by Evans, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember in the studio he was saying that, and he's just like, listen to that, like even the backing vocals that Crispy was doing and stuff. That shit was deranged, man.
Yes. Yeah.
It's funny because like back then, like I didn't really get into Deadguy till I would say like 99-ish, 2000, when I was starting to get into all the bigger shit like Poison the Well, stuff like that. I remember at first really not catching on to it, like, because I think back then I was so young, like my ears just couldn't really, like, they couldn't figure out what was going on. But then as I got older and I started listening to that chaotic stuff, and I put that on, I was like, yo, man, this fucking record is ridiculously good. Like, it's like, and a lot of people will call that a masterpiece record. And I mean, I couldn't really say it's a masterpiece to me, but I see why people just jump to that record still to this day. I mean, the show, they're playing all these shows, and they're selling out, aren't they?
Yeah, Dan said Dan was on the show. He went to the show at Kung Fu Necktie. He said it was packed.
Yeah, but I mean, because you know the videos that I've seen like in present day, they still have it up there. And it's
Yes.
hard. It's hard to do after 25 years, man. Especially like when the aesthetic isn't there anymore with, you haven't seen each other in that long. Like if you can get up there and do that, like that's fucking impressive, man.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's a feat to the guys who did it after. Like, to jump into that role as Tim Singer, like that's fucking it takes balls, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. They talked about that, how when Tim Singer left, the bassist, Tim Nauman, Pops, he picked up the mic and he started singing. They had their roadie. I think it was Tom Yak was their roadie. One of them was their roadie who became no, the bassist. So Jim Baglino, I think he was the roadie. He became the bassist. They got another guitar player.
Yeah.
And that went for a bit. And then when Tom Yak quit, the guy, I didn't even know they had a third guy, Chris Pierce, joined the band. And what band was he from, Tim? He was from another band of that era. I forgot.
Yeah. Fuck. Shit, I can't remember. You know what the real funny part is when they're talking about that, and what's his name from Dillinger was like, "Hey guys, like I'm right here. Like I can do this."
Yeah.
And then like he never got in the band, and then they're talking, and he's just like, "It's probably better that I didn't."
That was the other thing about this documentary. You had people from all sorts of bands all over the place talking about how much they loved the band and how much they loved that album. And I didn't realize, Tim, that album didn't come out. Fixation on a Coworker didn't come out until after they were broken up and on their second lineup. I didn't realize that.
Which is even wilder if you think about it.
Yes.
I mean, how many times does that happen when like a fucking record that's that influential comes out and it's like the band's not even together anymore? Like you're going to see them live. The record just comes out. You go to see them live and it's Tim's not even singing. It's like, wait, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's kind of nuts. I didn't realize that, but that album is unreal. The documentary is really kind of fun, just watching them all in a room because they're all interviewed separately and they each have their, oh, this guy's going to show up, he's going to be late, he's going to be a dick again because he always was, and they all get in the room and everybody gets along. And then the other thing I knew from reading behind the scenes shit, they just happened to be in a place where there was a drum set and a bunch of guitars. So that literally is organic when the director says, you guys want to go next door and mess around?
That motherfucker playing that shit.
Oh, I think he said in an interview that was one of his goals. I think.
Yeah, he did. He said, my goal was to see them fucking get together again and strum the guitars. And like, he said, like as they're filming it, it was just like magic.
And they showed it. It was like magic. They left off.
Yeah, you know what? It's what else is funny too. Like when Tim goes to Seattle, and they make Kiss It Goodbye. That's another fucking incredible band.
Yeah. Well, was that self-titled? Was it self-titled? Was the first album, right? Was it self-titled? I just remember it being again in the same vein as Deadguy, just a little bit. No, what was the first?
A little bit more botchy.
She Loves Me. She Loves Me. That was the first album.
I would say, that's where you get bands like Botch and shit coming out and stuff like that. Because what was Botch, like 98 when they started?
Yep.
And that's where you get bands like Curl Up and Die and shit like that. Like, it's, them bands, like a lot of people are like, oh, I love Curl Up and Die. And people sound like this. It's like, no, you got to go back and hear the bands that they were influenced by, because that's what's more important to me in this in music, especially heavy music, because you don't see it in top 40 shit. Well, you do. Everyone copies each other in top 40, but in metal and hardcore, man, like there's always the forefathers that people go or say that's what we wanted to sound like. If it wasn't for so and so band, we probably wouldn't even be here. And I think Deadguy is one of them bands that they don't even know the credit that they get, because it's kind of like Martyr A. Dean, Disembodied. The resurgence of them two bands, when I interviewed them guys, it's like, I'm like, do you even know how like respected them records are? And they're like, really, dude? It's like, we put these out in the 90s. And I'm like, but you have to sit here and you have to listen to all the new stuff that comes out. Everyone steals the Panic chords. It
is kind of funny how there are a lot of examples of bands that put out truly monumental, changing albums. They just went about their lives and never even thought that, it was a thing we did. It was kind of cool. And you're in the back like, yo, fucking Into Stone, play that live. I came out of Mosh retirement. First and last time in the last 10 years of Mosh retirement. Not doing that one again.
Yeah. You don't be hurting for 3 days later.
Oh my God. I was out of breath within 3 seconds. It was terrible. And I was actually skinnier. But to this point, to our point, them, Martyr AD, Disembodied, there are a lot of from that era who put out truly influential stuff that Buried Alive, One King Down, a lot of hardcore bands. Fahrenheit 451, arguably, they've influenced. I mean, they took their cues from Life of Agony, but then you end up with some stuff like Age of Apocalypse. Yeah. There was a lot of bands like that they did things and they never really got the reputation. They never got noticed. And 10, 15 years later, everybody sounds like them.
Well, look at Marauder and fucking All Out War. I mean, both of them. I mean, obviously, All Out War is going to tell you that Marauder record was a huge influence. Mm-hmm. Let's be fucking honest here. Yep. And now All Out Wars, for those who were crucified, that is a fucking monumental record. Everybody wants to sound like All Out War after that.
I'm curious to hear what the new album sounds like, because they're going into some metal influences. It sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, that one song was different, man. I wasn't expecting that at all.
You interviewed them, didn't you?
Yeah, I've interviewed Mike, yeah.
Yeah, we should get him back on. We should get him on when the new album comes out.
Super cool, super nice dude, yeah.
Yeah, he seemed like he was the one joking about he kicked the teeth into one of his students, right? Like he was at a show and he moshed one of his students. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so back to Deadguy. Oh yeah, he's a really cool dude. I'm sorry, Tim, I cut you off. What were you say?
He's like one of them dudes that's being a teacher at hardcore metal is really big, because there's a lot of people I've talked to. They're like, oh yeah, I'm a fourth grade teacher. I'm like, why the fuck are all you hardcore frontmen teachers?
I guess because they got all the anger out when they were playing shows, and now they're just.
Yeah, you know what? While we're talking about influential albums, I'm gonna give everyone a hot take right here. I think that the first Poison the Well EP is more influential than Opposite of December in metallic hardcore back then. That's a fucking steaming one right there. And I'm probably getting crucified right now. That's a hot take. But if you listen to that EP, man, and then you listen to like the next 28 bands that came out and them next coming years, they all fucking sounded like that.
I think if there was more time between the EP and the first album, you could easily chalk it up to, what was it? Distance. Distance makes a heart grow fonder.
Yeah.
You could chalk it up to that. But being as there wasn't that much time difference between Distance and Opposite of December, I don't know. It is a hot take. That's really
a hot one. Yeah, people are probably like, what the fuck is he talking about?
Get
out, you're drunk.
But seriously, though, go back and listen to that EP. It's really good. I listened to that for the first time ever in my life, probably in the last month or so, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I thought it was really good.
I like how raw it is.
Yeah. Very much not overproduced. Very much that Southern Florida abrasiveness. Speaking of overproduced, I find it funny that everybody that went to what's his name from Today Is the Day, Steve Austin, hates the job that he does. Everybody. Did he produce it? No, Steve Evans produced it. Where did they go? They went to Steve Austin for the second album.
Yeah.
Everybody that uses that guy complains about it.
Really?
Converge used him for the first two albums. They remastered them. Lamb of God used him for the first album and re-released everything remastered. Screaming with the Deadguy Quintet, their last EP, that was Steve Austin.
Was it Burn the Priest that he did?
No, he did New American Gospel.
Oh, really? That record's fun. I love how that record sounds.
It's still really, really good. I remember going to Sam Goody in the Deptford Mall, and I'm like, oh, Sam Goody has it. It's like $19, but I'll give it a go.
Now that I think about it, sorry, I was cutting you off. No. Now that I think about it, when we did our top 20 metalcore records, I totally forgot about New American Gospel. That is a fucking incredible record. Holy shit, that's a good record.
Yeah. Everybody who's listening, pause, go listen to that right now. It is, and it's one of those albums where the entire thing, there is not a skippable track on that whole thing. And you get to the end and you're like, fuck it, play.
the mosh in that and the mosh parts in that record are fucking irresponsible.
Yes.
Like I
Yes.
remember at fucking in when what's his name from A Life Once Lost used to throw shows,
Bob.
Bob, at Polanka Park, man. And that was right when they changed to Lamb of God. And I remember they came through. It was A Life Once Lost, Lamb of God, The End. Remember The End from Canada?
Yes.
It was them and it was another band. But dude, the mosh parts in that record were just fucking apocalyptic, man.
That was one of the first metal albums I remember actually having dedicated to hardcore breakdowns.
Yeah, and they fucking killed that
Yeah.
shit, man. Like even the Burn the Priest record is savage as shit.
Oh, I still go back and listen to that all the time. Do you think it's because they toured and played a lot with hardcore bands, so it just came naturally to them?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Richmond back then was huge with hardcore. They still are actually, but
yeah.
See, that's the thing a lot of people don't understand. And we always talk about, like, you got to remember, like, where you come from is what your sound is going to be like. It doesn't even matter if you're a metal band, because where you come from, if you go to shows, you're going to sound like that.
Right.
That's why a lot of the punk
and those
rock
are the bands you're going to play with, right?
Yeah,
if you're doing local shows, there's not usually unless you're Boston, Philly now. There's not usually 5 or 6 hardcore bands from the area. You're going to play a mixed bill with. And back in the late 90s and stuff, there was all mixed bills. It was metal, hardcore. It was whatever the fuck ISIS was. They all played shows together. Then you had this. Then you had the post-hardcore screamo stuff coming in, the Glassjaws, and shit. I saw Poison the Well with Strung Out.
Wow.
Yeah, yuck.
Yeah, dude,
By the way, did you see that someone is restoring the Trocadero?
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
That is awesome. One of my favorite venues.
Dude, I seen Burn the Priest with God Forbid at the Kill Time.
Where was that?
44th, 5th, 6th, something like that. And
was that North Philly?
No. It was west.
Oh, not much better.
There was a bar across the street called New Angle Lounge. And you could go in there and literally have be fucking 12 years old and they would sell you a 40. That's where everybody used to go and get 40s and shit. And then the Kill Time was just somebody's house. Like the shows were in the living room, and then like they would sell merch in the backyard and shit. It was fucking out of control, dude.
That is wild. Nobody does that these days. Have you ever heard of the venue Warehouse on Watts?
Is it new?
It's on North Broad. Morbid Angel's playing there with Revocation, Vitriol, and somebody else in April.
Oh, wow.
April. Dude, it's fucking November and they're booking shit for April.
Well, Chris used to have a venue called the Boiler Room that was insane. That was in North Philly.
Really?
My old band used to play there all the time. And that place was fucking nuts. Like, that was a crazy neighborhood, dude. But yeah, I mean, see back then too, man, when Deadguy and shit's playing shows back then, like that's when shows were fucking violent. And and when a band like Deadguy is playing shows like that, it's like the violence was just unimaginable back then. But it was very violent, but it wasn't the kind of shit where people were like fighting. Like, yeah,
it wasn't malicious
fights. Yeah,
it wasn't malicious.
There's fights, but if you're gonna step in that pit back in 96, 98, 99, all that kind of shit, you're gonna get fucking hit.
Yeah, it was violent, but it wasn't malicious. People weren't trying to hurt you. It was just the way it was.
It was just different, dude. Like, like Bleeding Through came through, and like it's just violent shit, dude. Because them records back then, you have to think too. When bands like Bleeding Through or Deadguy, since we're talking about them, that like if you listen to the music back then compared to now, everything's over polished and everything's on the grid. Back then, you had the raw fucking just recorded it live, and you got the way the band sounded. And when you seen them, they sounded exactly like the record. So a lot of aggression that was recorded for them records came out live, and it comes out in the pit back then. And I think that's one of the big things about Deadguy back then, because it was so just raw and just mind altering when you listen to it. That's what sets even people in the band just on a different level. And that's where you get, I think that's why that band is so looked at now as like, what's that word that I'm trying to say?
Revered? They're so revered?
Yeah. Because back then it was just like, it was the passion in the music and you felt it. So now when you hear that record again, say 20 years later, like you feel that feeling again. And like
Yeah.
a lot of people have never felt that. Like kids that are born 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I mean, and are just starting to get into heavy music, and their first heavy music is, say, Bullet for My Valentine. You don't get that aggression. You don't
No.
get that passion in that stuff. So that's why I think bands like this are so, like you said, revered, because it brings you back, dude.
Yeah.
You don't get that anymore, man. And
It's-
that's why I wish there was a lot more shows that had footage back then for kids these days to see, man, because then you would get a whole different feel for it.
So speaking of footage and speaking of the violence, another thing that was very, very important, vital to Deadguy's success, especially in the area, was there's a Middlesex County College in the middle of New Jersey is a county college. It's a small school that used to put on shows. And if you go on YouTube and enter like Glassjaw, Middlesex County College, Deadguy, Candiria, Earth Crisis, the famous or infamous yogurt throwing incident with Earth Crisis, right? That was all at Middlesex County College, which is a tiny community college in the middle of nowhere, like in the middle of Middlesex County. It's not very big, but they used to put on hardcore shows and metal shows, Converge and all those bands, Dillinger. It's kind of wild, but it also speaks to, for bands like this that are kind of off kilter, not what everybody's expecting, you do need a local scene in order for them to get big. That's how they get big.
But you also got to remember, back then you didn't have the internet. You didn't have, like, a lot of people went into shows and they're like, oh, who's this band Deadguy? And then they went on and completely blew their fucking minds.
Yep.
And then see, that's why I think bands had it like better back then, because I mean, obviously now social media is great. You could just go on and write, here's our tour, see us here. But back then, dude, like you didn't have that shit. So you had to catch a fan while you played or when the record came out. And it's very, very important to catch a band when you play, or catch a fan when you play live, because that's how you sell CDs. That's how you sell merch back then. And that's what kept you afloat. And that's what made bands huge, was their live show. And Deadguy was one of them bands, like I said, I've never seen them, but from the videos, them dudes put on a show. Like, even the bands that were interviewed were like, we never, ever wanted to go on after Deadguy. How could we? Like, even Doc from God Forbid was like, I was scared to death to play after them. How could you? Like, they just came on and obliterated venues, dude. And people were just like shell-shocked after, like, oh, what the fuck?
I don't... Well, to your point, right? To your point about a live band. And this is why I think anybody who's listening, you need to go see bands live if you like them on record. And here's why. There are certain bands where they're great live, but they don't really resonate on record. Either the recording isn't as good, or it doesn't really capture the energy of a live band. Conversely, there are bands that make great studio albums, and then you see them live and you're going, well, what the fuck is this? Like, this is not what I heard. And there's bands that you and I have talked about where you've said, well, the recording's kind of underwhelming, but then you see them live and it's, whoa, okay, I'm in. One of who came out this year? Oh Jesus, too many beers. Undeath. On record, they're pretty good. They're a serviceable metal band, not bad. Live, total blast.
Maybe I would like them more if I seen them live.
I saw them in Vegas. I saw them open for Dying Fetus, and I'm going again next weekend with 200 Stab Wounds. They're just a fun band to see live. They put on a good show. Sanguisuga Bog, right? On record, it's not bad. Live, it's a total experience. Frozen Soul, it's an experience live. On record, it's okay. It's good metal, but live, they kick it up a notch.
Well, it's kind of like Creeping Death and shit. When you see them live, it's like your ears fucking bleed. And
yes. Escuela Grind, the new album is good, and Kurt Ballou did a great job producing it, but it doesn't grab that manic energy they have when they're live. It was kind of nuts in Vegas, and it's good, but it doesn't capture that the pop. So if you're
What
watching, if you're listening, go see bands live. Spend the money. Even go by yourself if you have to. You'll find somebody to talk to.
let me ask you this. So if Deadguy is to put out an EP, 4-song EP, who do you think that they would go and record with? Now, before you answer that, I'm kind of wondering if they would go back and go to Evans. I think Evans obviously still records. I don't know what he's doing nowadays. I'm going to look it up while we're talking. But do you think if they say they went to Steve Evans again, did a 4-song EP, or say they went to Kurt Ballou, do you think the aesthetic of back then would be captured today with Kurt Ballou, or do you think Steve Evans? That's exactly what I was.
No, they'd have to go to Steve Evans or
someone along the lines of that.
They'd have to go to someone someone who captured one of those bands at the time. They would have to go to someone who really reveres that stuff and can do something with it. Like what's his name? The guy who's the guy that everybody's using now up in North Jersey. Orthodox used him, Boundaries used him.
Oh yeah, I forget his name. But yeah, if they went to someone like that, it'd be too polished.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? Yeah. Like it'd be a good recording, but it wouldn't be.
He's into that genre. Like, or what's his name? Wyatt Oberholzer, right? The Philly guy. He could probably do it. Right. I don't think you could go to a Kurt Ballou because you'd hear too much Kurt Ballou in it.
Yeah, it would be too dark.
And what's his name? Even like Will Putney, you would hear too much Will Putney in it. You need someone who could just go in and say, guys, just do your fucking thing. I'm going to hang out in the back, tweak some knobs, and grab what I can. And I think they probably could go to my bathroom and record a fucking EP, and it would come out amazing.
Yeah. I don't think you could do a record that's on the grid and just too overproduced. Like, don't get me wrong, Putney puts out amazing sounding records, but for Deadguy, I don't think you could go to. I think you're 100% correct. And as soon as that question came to my mind, I'm like, I have to ask that because it's like,
no, they need to go to. I mean, shit, they can go back to what's his name, Steve Austin, have him do it again.
Yeah.
Oh, this time with a gun to his head, I'm like, dude, fuck this up and we'll kill you.
I know he still does recordings and stuff. I was actually supposed to talk to him a long time ago, and he like got real busy with something. We should hit him up. I guarantee he'd be a cool guest.
Yeah, he'd probably be a real fun interview to talk to. But so for those of you that are watching, we haven't mentioned it yet, but this documentary is available for free to stream on Tubi, Tubi, and there was somewhere else, Tim, it was available. Where was it available? It wasn't Netflix.
It's on Fourth Media's website to buy, and then I think they have a live show that you can grab, right?
Yeah, they have the live show from night after they released the movie. They played a set in Philly. They played another set. I think it was at St. Vitus.
Yeah, Brooklyn.
They recorded that.
Yeah, I have to check that out. Yeah.
And then since they did Decibel Metal and Beer Fest. They just played a show and they played Garwood, they played Philly, and they played one other one. They're starting to poke around here and there and do some shows. So it'd be kind of cool if they did another, quick 4-song EP. There's that one song, I forget what the title was. It's actually lost. The original recording is lost. They can't find it. What was the name of it?
Did that premiere? That premiered at Underground Arts?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it did.
It's cool. That's cool that they picked Philly for that when they could have did like somewhere in Jersey. It's before we forget too. How much was WSOU big for that band? How big was WSOU? Yeah, huge. That's what I figured.
I mean, they played the Birthday Bash. So when you look at that show and you look at the bands that were on it, the undercard, right? So the opening bands, the early acts. Those were bands that SOU put on for and was hoping they were going to get big. It was Kilgore Smudge. It was back when they were Kilgore Smudge. It was 5 Seconds Expired, Fury of Five, Deadguy, Core, Drill. What else? A lot of smaller New York, New Jersey. Propane. God, Propane played every show. Every show in the mid to late 90s, Propane was on.
I seen them at the Troc one night. It was one of the heaviest shows I've ever seen.
Yeah, they're fucking loud. They're loud. Dog Eat Dog was on that show. Bile, the industrial band from, I think they're from New York. Orange 9. So yeah, they were a band that SOU put on for.
Yeah, I figured that, especially being the Jersey Connect right there. That's another. We got to talk to someone from WSOU. We have to.
I gotta find there's a bunch of the DJs from back in the day are floating around, and wish I probably should bring up Doc. I'm like, yo, can you hook us up with Jen Kaiser? They had a couple of DJs though that were really good, and they would play some. I mean, they would play new metal, hardcore, metal, The Cure, death metal, and then go back, and it was all over the place, which was kind of that's where I found a lot of the music I listened to because they would play literally anything. And I remember sitting in front of my house listening to Candiria live in the WSOU studio. They played, I think it was 3 or 4 songs from Surrealistic Madness, and it was an interview in between. And I didn't want to get out of the car. I didn't want to miss it because they didn't go to commercial. It was an interview, a song, an interview, a song. I sat out front of my house for like an hour in the car. I think it wasn't in the rain, but it was at night listening to the radio.
You would never have that these days, man.
No.
Like,
no.
I remember you had Loud and Local and stuff back then. It was, I think it was on YSP.
What was YSP's? It was
94.1.
Yeah, 94.1. It was Friday nights or Saturday nights where they would do metal was it after midnight?
Sunday nights was Loud and Local.
And what was Saturday?
Saturday nights was the metal. You would hear
and it was like
Pantera.
It was like midnight to 2 a.m. or something, right? Or 10 to 12, 10 to 12, something like that.
Well, we also had 103.9 WDRE, and they did a lot of metal stuff. Yeah, DRE, people from Philly, listen, you'll know DRE. It was 103.9, which is now a rap station, I believe. But yeah, they used to have a lot of heavy shit. Like, they would have the Maiden hour and the Metallic hour, and then as it got later, you would hear the Pantera and all that kind of Slayer, all that kind of shit. But
because I just remember valeting, and it was at the 94th Aero Squadron in North Philly, the club/bar at the Northeast Philadelphia Airport, which is the worst place to try and get to because you take 95, you get off, and you literally have to go all the way around the airfield to get to the bar. It was terrible. It was easily an hour and a half drive. It was terrible. But I remember valet was great. It was like, oh shit, 10 o'clock, metal's on. Everybody's car radio was 94.1 because
and everybody that had a tape, they would press record and let it just record the fucking air shift. I used to do that shit all the time, man. I wish I still had tapes of that. That would be amazing, dude.
Yeah, good. I had so many of those back in the day. So anyway, back to Deadguy. So.
Well, I just looked up Rorschach, and it was Keith. It was Keith.
Okay.
It was Keith. He was in Rorschach.
So
and Deadguy, then Kiss It Goodbye.
Yeah, and then he did nothing, and then he's back to Deadguy. So anybody, if you like any of that noisy, angular, chaotic, hardcore, and punk rock, again, Ken Mode, Unsane, Today Is the Day, they all draw influence from this. Check the DVD out, check the documentary out on Tubi, rent it, buy it. I know that they have copies of it when they play live. They really were an amazing band that was well before their time. And if you look I think on YouTube, there's some live shots from Decibel Metal Fest. They can still play and they pull it off. But this is one of those bands which was sneaky influential, and people don't realize until after the fact that, oh yeah, I guess I did kind of get it from Deadguy. And we can't go, Tim, without talking about the whole Death to False Metal icon, which has been ripped off by every band. I think I have a Ether Coven and a Boundaries t-shirt that have the font with the pentagram in the front. On the back it has Baphomet and it says Death to False Metal.
I love it.
It's good stuff. So everybody, we'll put a link in the show notes to the Fourth Media website where you can buy a copy. We will put a link to Tim's interview with Tim Singer, which was great. I remember you asked him about the font, and he was like, "Oh no," because it was a kind of weird question, but love that font, love the graphic design. So check out Deadguy, check out their live recordings, go back and listen to Fixation on a Coworker, and then remember this was 1994, 95 when it came out. It was kind of nuts. And that was totally brave new ground. So any other final thoughts, Tim, before we take it home?
Nah, like you said, man, just go and listen to that Deadguy record if you're a fan of anything extreme metal wise. I think that, if you haven't heard it, you might pick it up and be like, wow, this is fucking good. And I wish I would have heard this a long time ago. I think it's a pivotal record to throw in your collection. And it's what though? Get a pair of headphones, man, and put that record on and just sit there, smoke a joint, whatever you got to do, and enjoy a nice drink, but put that record on, sit on the couch, and just fucking let it hit your brain, man, because it'll spin your head, dude.
And you're absolutely right. You need headphones. You won't.
Absolutely.
It's good on a speaker loud. It's even better with headphones.
Definitely.
Fantastic. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. Find us at @newbreed_podcast on Twitter. Maybe someday we'll have the blue check, pay $8 a month to be verified. Who knows? And on Instagram. You can email us if you like what you heard, newbreedpodcast@gmail.com. There are other documentaries we should be watching. What else should Tim and I talk about? Should we do the Mudvayne live DVD as a viewing party? Who knows? You'll find out. And find us on Facebook. We have a New Breed Podcast page. It's kind of quiet, but you never know. And we can always be found, the New Breed Podcast can be found on r/New Metal. So once again, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. And until next week, this is a New Breed saying cheers.
Later.